But this morning, I am delighted on behalf of all of us here at the LJS to welcome on Zoom, and thank you for being with us because I know that you haven't been too well, so extra special thanks to Kenneth Awele Okafor for being with us here this morning. Kenneth describes himself as a Black British Jew of Nigerian Igbo ethnicity, who also has West African, North African, East African, and Middle Eastern ancestry. He works for Jewish communities or encourages Jewish communities in Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa to promote their Jewish identity, which is often intermingled with African cultural traditions. Additionally, he is an active member of the JW3 Young Advisory Group. He leads JW3 Young Jews of Color organization for Jews of Afro-Caribbean, Asian, and Middle Eastern descent. Kenneth is included in the book, What Does a Jew Look Like? By Keith Kahn Harris and Robert Stothard, which investigates portraits of British Jews that illustrate some of the many ways men and women might be Jewish in Britain today. Kenneth, we're delighted to welcome you. Thank you for being with us. You're going to speak to us now, and then there will be an opportunity during Kiddush for people to help themselves to food, very kindly sponsored by Roy Friedman, and to ask you some questions after the service. So over to you.
Thank you, Rabbi Alexandra. It's a pleasure to be here. Also, it's an absolute pleasure for Rabbi Igor to invite me over, as well as Emma Marie for recommending me to give a talk on this topic. The topic, it's an interesting topic because in terms of identity within the Jewish community and the term Jew of color pops up, I'm trying to figure out what does the term Jew of color mean? Could it find it online or could it find it anywhere? Technically, some people would reinterpret it as, people who are, Jewish community from, the Middle East or Africa, Asia, Far East, or countries within those areas. But also as well, the term Jew of color does apply to people who is based on a racial identity, especially among people whose skin color is black or brown, who also have Ashkenazi heritage. So it's a term is derived from America and it's been brought to the UK. It seems quite adequate. The term Jew of color is being used within each other, but still raises a question about how we use that term. But then it was like a couple of weeks ago or months ago, I'm having my discussions with other, Jews of color from countries from Ethiopia, Zambia, Nigeria, Ghana, some from Yemen. When they hear the term of Jew of color or even a black Jew, they seem to be frowned upon because of the fact that it doesn't reflect upon their identity. It's more than just being a Jew of color, which does have a certain issue in terms of how to describe these Jewish communities outside of Europe. Of course, we have the Ashkenazi Jewish communities across the world, but there are other Jewish communities that don't often use the particular titles. For example, you have B'nai Menashe, the Jewish communities of India, Burma, and China. They tend to use that term. Or there's a particular term for the Maragbi Jews from West Africa. Those terms are among Jewish communities within West Africa. Or you have the Jews of Bilad el Sudan, which is the land of the black people, which is also used in West Africa and North Africa. So, of course, you've got the Beta Israel, which is normally describes the Ethiopian Jews, and you have the Mizrahim Jews, which is among the Middle Eastern, North African Jewish communities. So it's like there's this question being raised upon what is a particular title to describe Jewish communities in these international countries. It's certainly being brought up by the fact that Jew of color it's too direct. It's not really their way of describing their culture. Their Jewish practice and customs is more than just that. But at the same time, the term Jew of color, as well as Black Jew, is actually a social construct term that enables us to be described within Jewish spaces, but also outside of Jewish spaces. So it's just like having these discussions with African Jewish communities, Middle Eastern Jewish communities, communities from the Far East, finding a definitive term to describe, and taking part in the Jewish Agency for Israel. We're having session after session with Jews of color from the US, the UK, France, Germany, Australia, the Far East, and other countries around the world. We're coming together trying to find some kind of identity that fits us all. Whenever someone, say, a Jew of color, it seems like it's being referred to someone who's based on their skin identity or something that reflects upon their heritage. But it's like finding ways to look in terms of dealing with those issues. And within the Jewish communities itself, of course, there are some Jewish communities in Africa or in the Caribbean or in certain areas are not recognized by the state of Israel. So what I'm currently trying to do, working with these communities, is, in terms of keeping Jewish customs and practices, and also finding ways to intertwine and implement Afro-Caribbean, Asian, Middle Eastern practices that were able to build up their identity. That way, as part of Black History Month, is finding ways to educate, the Western Jewish communities, like in the UK and the US. It would enable us to learn from those communities, and having a particular identity that would reflect those communities across the world, that would enable us to understand each other and finding ways to learn their Jewish practice, what made them to be part of the Jewish, world, and this way of understanding each other and building up relationships and network. As I brought up the word building, as discussed in the Torah readings, all about building, connections, building. You've got this use of the tar and the brick. You build them together, and you're forming some kind of overall building of the Tower of Babel. So it's like finding ways to build and connect and learn from each other is some kind of way to educate these, Jewish communities outside the UK or the US, just to understand and learn their way of how they practice, Judaism, how they keep Shabbat, how they keep Kashrut, how they, pray and find ways to celebrate festivals. And these are the sort of things that would actually enable us within the UK to hear, their voices, but through their own identity. The term Jew of color has a reflection upon a racial identity among people who are Black or brown, and even though who have Ashkenazi heritage. But also, I really feel like it's more than just a skin color. I think there's cultural aspects that does build up our own identity that would enable us to be Jews no matter where you're from. So it's just a way to build up that identity, or build up a particular term, an overall term that describes everyone. Jews come in all colors from around the world. It's the sort of thing that doesn't build up some kind of reminder that regardless of your skin color, regardless of where you're coming from, we're all Jews, we all practice Judaism. No matter, people have their own best practice. We should be having our own way to embrace Judaism, no matter where you're coming from. It's an innovative way, it's unconventional. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be orthodox. It depends, as we've discussed about the climate crisis, it depends within your own climate. You find your own way to survive and adapt and finding ways to overcome those issues. So that's the purpose of being within your own setting in order to find your own way to define your own Judaism. People find that's one of the reasons why it's featured in the book by Keith Khan Harris is, embracing your own Israelite heritage as well as your African heritage, or they're coming both ways, but also people come in different shapes, different identities in terms of LGBTQ+, in terms of disabled, in terms of you have your beliefs in atheism. It's those ways of exploring your own, Jewish identity, in a comfortable manner. So it's just finding ways to, using, ways of learning Jewish heritage and culture and customs and practices from other communities, but, with the terms, I don't want to go into the situation what happened recently in the news regarding, a certain rapper, but it's like, there's misconfusion between the term Black Jew and Black Hebrew Israelite. There's so many differences, but that also needs to be addressed as well. So all of those things, it all needs to be addressed within our own spaces, and also that would actually enable all of us to build, solidarity and network with other communities, with the Black community, with the Asian communities. Of course, we've got a new Prime Minister who is Asian descent. So all of those things is just finding ways to build up networks and finding ways to understand each other, to overcome, all forms of hatred, such as racism, such as anti-Semitism, just to find ways to educate each other and see everyone as one, and then find ways to build peace within each other. So those are the sort of things that I want to do for the future, especially for the younger generation, especially the younger generation who's identified as Black or Jewish, or a person of color and Jewish, or someone who's got Jewish friends, or vice versa. So those sort of things that I wanted to do within my own setting in terms of working with the Afro-Caribbean communities, as well as working with the Middle Eastern communities, Ethiopian Jewish communities. So exploring my own ancestry as well, finding my own heritage through Yemen and Ethiopian Jewish communities, as well as North African communities, as well as West African communities. So all of those things come into one, and then you find inspirational connections with people. It's all about hearing stories, finding ways to connect. So it's hopefully when people find their own identity, it's a unique way to share and experience those moments within each other, and it does build benefits in terms of being peaceful, being reinsuring our own well-being among each other in terms of education and learning experiences for people. So that's why I really feel like there's more than just being a Jew of color, there's more than just being a Black Jew, all about intersectionality, all about finding ways to not only promote your Jewish identity in an innovative, creative way, but also building up your heritage and your background that could actually enable you to be more severely, friendly and calm and relaxed about who you are within society. So yeah, that's what I feel in terms of finding ways to learn from each other within our own Jewish communities. We all are one. We appreciate all Jewish customs, and finding ways to cut down on racism within the Jewish community. Accepting all Jews of particular backgrounds, and finding ways to integrate everyone who wants to be part of the Jewish community, and finding ways to build up a more friendly and more respectable way of understanding each other. So I'll be more than happy to talk about it at 1 o'clock after the service finishes. But I just want to say thank you to Rabbi Igor for inviting me, Rabbi Alexandra, and Emma Marie, and everyone who's listening to my presentation. Just want to thank you for taking your time to listen to my talk. It's brilliant to. It's a shame I'm not there in person in terms of my illness, but I'm getting better now. So, but next time I'll definitely love to visit your shul and experience the atmosphere in more detail. So yeah, thank you so much for inviting me over.
Thank you so much, Kenneth, for being with us on Zoom and sharing with us these thoughts about really identity and the names we give ourselves, or sometimes the names other people give to us, which aren't always appropriate. And I hope too that you'll be able to come back, you'll be able to come and be with us in person. And as you said, I want to echo our thanks to you, Emma Marie, for creating the introduction, and to Rabbi Igor, who is with us today, but just hidden for the minute, but very present, be assured, and who will be in conversation with you and facilitating the questions, Kenneth.